Coming up on Valley View News, the biggest strike in higher education history.
For the cost of living in California, we are paid poverty wages.
Plus, artists showcase their work at the Renegade Crafts Fair.
I think it's a really great opportunity for independent business people.
And CSUN is teaching one of Mexico's long-standing musical traditions.
You don't have to be a music major to enroll in this class. You can be a major of any other career choice.
Hello and welcome to Valley View News. I'm Jesse Barrientos.
And I'm Giovanni Galvez.
5 people died and 25 were injured after a 22-year-old gunman opened fire inside a gay nightclub in Colorado Springs last Saturday. Police say the suspect entered the club Q with a semi-automatic rifle, a handgun, and extra ammunition. Students of CSUN campus say the attack brings concerns about safety.
We've lost the safety in our world because we're all scared of something.
It's not right. We need to do something to reform it. Personally, I believe that we should have stricter gun control. We should have better background checks.
The attack ended when 2 customers grabbed the suspect's weapons and hit him with it. They then pinned him down until police arrived. Authorities said suspect is being charged with murder and hate crimes.
Enrollment at California's community colleges plummeted to a 30-year low, a new data shows. Since the pandemic in 2019, 115 campuses lost about 300,000 students. That's an 18% drop. The loss of students will significantly affect funding for community colleges.
Classes have been canceled and labs have been closed as the UC system faces a graduate worker strike. Our reporter Rocky Walker watched as they marched.
The largest strike in higher education history is currently taking place. 48,000 academic workers across the University of California system left their jobs. They're demanding better compensation. They say wages cause many UC student workers to struggle to pay rent.
So over 92% of TAs at UC are rent burdened, and I'm absolutely one of them. I pay about 45% of my income on rent each month.
They're demanding childcare for workers with children, fee reductions for international students, and they're pushing for transportation support. They want graduate workers' salaries raised from $24,000 a year to $54,000, and postdoctoral workers want yearly salaries of $70,000.
For the cost of living in California, we are paid poverty wages, especially those of us that have a PhD, like myself.
Postdoctoral scholars, academic researchers, graduate student researchers, and academic student employees make up the strike. The United Auto Workers Union represents them. Many UC undergrads joined the picket line in solidarity.
They're my teachers, so their working conditions are my learning conditions. So if their working conditions are really difficult and they're overworked and underpaid, that means my learning conditions are suffering as well.
The UC system offered a 7% pay raise. They stand by this raise, calling it fair and generous. Union officials say it still isn't enough. The UC strike took months to organize, and organizers state there's no end in sight until all 4 bargaining points reach a resolution. Reporting for Valley View News, I'm Rocky Walker.
The Supreme Court will reconsider its past decision on affirmative action. The court will review 2 cases from Harvard and the University of North Carolina to decide if affirmative action cases will be overturned. The decision is expected in June. Public and private universities have sought ways to increase diversity without directly taking race into account. Data from the University of California's incoming 2022 freshman class shows improvement in diversity. However, the diversity still remains lower than the state's overall demographic profile.
1 person was fatally shot and another injured in a shooting at the University of New Mexico last Saturday. Officials say the shooter was a student from New Mexico State. The victim was from the University of New Mexico. The shooting happened on campus just hours before a men's basketball game. The schools are basketball rivals. The game had to be postponed. Police didn't immediately release the victims' names. So far, no charges have been filed.
Some students at the University of Virginia think there's a lack of awareness about campus safety. Recently, 3 student athletes were shot and killed on campus. Some students say they're not surprised by recent killings on college campuses. Many university police departments offer active shooter training for students and staff.
California is projecting a $2.6 billion deficit for schools and community colleges. The state will dip into its education rainy day fund to cover the deficit. Many worry new programs like the tutoring initiative could be cut. Some educators are anxious leading up to Governor Newsom's New Year budget report. The governor said it's important to be disciplined in spending. The state's overall budget deficit is expected to be about $25 billion.
The Senate Judiciary Committee is looking into allegations that a former anti-abortion leader got word of a 2014 Supreme Court decision involving healthcare coverage of contraceptions before the decision was made public. Conservative Christian Rob Schenck claims he learned of the outcome of the 2014 case before the decision was announced. The Times reported Schenck said the leak came from a donor to his organization, Gail Wright. Wright denies obtaining and sharing information.
Georgia officials asked a court on last Friday to immediately block a judge ruling striking down the state's abortion ban. The ruling allows abortions to be performed beyond 6 weeks of pregnancy. A Fulton County judge ruled that two key parts of the rule are unconstitutional and the laws can't be enforced. The state passed the ban before the Supreme Court's decision in overturning Roe v. Wade. Clinic operators will begin discussing the possibilities of offering abortions up to 22 weeks of pregnancy.
In a report published last Thursday, the Center for Disease Control says at-home births have been increasing since 2019 and are at the highest level since the 1990s. Out of 4 million births in 2021, 52,000 were at-home births. The report shows a 12% increase from 2020. This follows a 22% increase in the previous year. Increases were seen across all races and ethnicities, although the report also shows that at-home births are less common among the Hispanic women. Experts say despite the increase, at-home births are still rare, accounting for less than 2% of all births in the United States.
Free diapers and menstrual products are available at select libraries. Our reporter, Camille Acevedo, talked to the San Fernando library manager.
The San Fernando Library is giving away free diapers and menstrual products. It's a program dedicated to help families who struggle to purchase essential hygiene goods.
The program has been a huge success in our community. We have distributed over 150 products since the launch of the service.
Los Angeles County Supervisor Hilda Solisa backs the program. The nonprofit Baby to Baby has donated their brand's diapers, tampons, and pads. Upon request, participating families receive ready-to-go bags filled with the products.
We have new and returning customers who consistently express their appreciation and gratitude in regards to the program. And the amount of feedback, the positive feedback that we received just really helps to create that community goodwill.
It's not just cisgendered females. I believe that everyone should have the right to menstruation products.
This library in San Fernando is one out of the 5 libraries in Los Angeles to be handing out free diapers and menstrual products. Here in San Fernando for Valley View News, I'm Camille Acevedo.
President Joe Biden's granddaughter, Naomi Biden, got married on the south lawn of the White House last Saturday. She wed her longtime boyfriend, Peter Neal. This is the 19th wedding to take place at the White House in its 200-plus year history. Naomi Biden wore a long-sleeve high-neck gown, and her new husband wore a navy blue 3-piece suit. The president and the first lady were the hosts of the wedding.
LAPD officers had made an arrest in a brutal assault on a married couple outside the Elton John concert at Dodger Stadium. The attack happened in the parking lot of Dodger Stadium when the assailant hit the couple's side mirror of their car. The husband questioned the assailant, that is when the attack happened. He was sent to the hospital with a broken leg and a concussion. The wife was also attacked and knocked to the ground. No details have been released about the assailant.
A man arrested in Los Angeles for a crash that injured a group of Sheriff's Department recruits has been released. The 22-year-old was arrested on the suspicion of attempted murder after driving an SUV into a group of law enforcement recruits on the opposite side of the road. Due to the extreme complexity and multiple pieces of evidence that needs to be analyzed, Nicholas Joseph Gutierrez was released. 5 recruits were critically injured. Another 2 are still in critical condition.
Pfizer says its latest updated COVID booster may offer more protection against the new emerging Omicron variants. With variants of the BA.5 strain emerging, Pfizer and its partner BioNTech says the new booster is aimed at protecting against Omicron subtypes. Experts say it's still too soon to know how long protection from the booster will last. As of November 12th, the BA.5 variant is responsible for about 30% of the new cases in the U.S.
California prisons transfer people with mental illnesses far more frequently than other prisoners, a Cal Matters investigation found. The Cal Matters probe found that some inmates moved more than a dozen times. Analysis of data from 2016 to 2021 found prisoners in enhanced outpatient mental health treatments were moved 3 times more often than other prisons. They were moved on average 5 times within this time period compared to 1.5 transfers average for the general population. Advocates say that the shuffling of mental ill prisoners can be damaging and disruptive to an already vulnerable population.
U.S. officials are proposing changes to WIC, a federal program that aids in grocery expenses for more than 6 million low-income pregnant women, infants, and children. The changes would include extending payments for fresh produce given during the pandemic and making changes permanent. It would also offer a wider selection of whole grains, canned fish, and non-dairy options for shoppers. The goal of the update is to expand the amount and type of healthy foods available to families who receive WIC. If authorized by Congress, the revisions would increase vouchers for fruits and vegetables to $25 a month for children ages 1 to 5 to $49 a month for breastfeeding women.
Fast food workers across the state went on strike as restaurant groups pushed to overturn the signed labor law. The governor signed AB 257, giving fast food workers a say in pay and safety standards. It regulates working conditions and pushes the minimum wage to $22 per hour next year. But workers want to overturn it and be allowed to create their own minimum wages and more. The Save Local Restaurants group petitioned against the bill, saying that it would lead to a rise in food prices and close their businesses. The head of California Labor Federation said those on strike are standing up for what they worked hard to pass.
More to come on Valley View News. Indonesia is hit by an earthquake and clothing retailer Guess is under fire. Stay with us.
Coming up on Valley View News, the Thousand Oaks community restores native plants in the Santa Monica Mountains.
We're engaging with the community, but we're also meeting our goals.
Plus, learn about a national landmark made by a 60-year-old woman.
There were 13 buildings to start, and now there's 5 that are still standing.
And what's in a martial arts museum?
I found it to be wonderfully fantastic.
Hello and welcome to Valley View News. I'm Jesse Barrientos.
And I'm Giovanni Galvez.
Congresswoman Karen Bass leads the LA mayoral race with more than 9,000 votes over developer Rick Caruso. The LA County Clerk reports Bass with 50.8% of the vote. Caruso has 49.2% as of this week. Bass would be the first African-American woman to be mayor. Caruso's team says it's optimistic and looking forward to the final results. Thousands of ballots remain uncounted. A winner won't be determined for weeks. Updates are announced every Tuesday and Friday. Both candidates promise to grapple with the city's homeless crisis.
Public schools will get $1 billion for arts and music programs thanks to Proposition 28. 28 passed with 61.6% voter approval. Former LA School Superintendent Austin Butner says it's a big step forward for public education. The proposition creates an annual funding stream for K-12. The state now must give 1% above what's legally required to fund the program. Schools in low-income areas are prioritized for funding.
Graduate students, workers at the University of California system voted to strike. Their unions represent more than 48,000 workers. They want more compensation, childcare, reimbursements, better job security, and stronger disability protections. The union claims that at least one researcher lived out of their car last year. The strike was authorized after 6,000 workers voted to strike after more than 20 unfair labor practices were filed. The claims include the University of California's refusal to change working conditions. The University of California hasn't commented.
LA health officials told people to stay out of the ocean due to high levels of bacteria. They said the levels are high because of rainwater flowing to the ocean. The department said to avoid storm drains, creeks, and rivers. It said bacteria levels tend to increase up to 3 days after rainstorms. Bacteria result in illnesses, especially in children and the elderly. The ocean water quality rain advisory lasted until Thursday.
California Water Watch says the drought will affect everyone as usable water declines. It says in the next 2 decades, the state could lose 10% of its water supplies. 2019 was the second driest year for the state. Some farmers say the drought is worse for them because they must follow strict water rules. The rules protect plants and animal species that are at risk of extinction. Farmers complain that laws let huge amounts of water into the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta instead of the other lands. The Center for Biological Diversity says the laws have been more than 99% successful.
In Thousand Oaks, some volunteers are putting their green thumbs to good use. Valley View News' Camille Acevedo visited a nursery that restores plants.
On Fridays and Saturdays, the Santa Monica Mountains Fund uses volunteers to help with plant restoration at the Native Plant Nursery. Assistant Nursery Manager Carla Gonzalez works with the volunteers at the Rancho Sierra Vista Nursery.
They could help us to grow these plants, transplant them, and that way we're engaging with the community, but we're also meeting our goals.
Volunteers help process cuttings, transplant seedlings, sow seed flats, weed, water, and fertilize. More than 50,000 native plants are being grown for restoration.
It's always great to do something that contributes to the environment, whether or not it's the physical environment or the social environment. You're part of the ecosystem.
30,000 out of the 50,000 plants here are Stipa pulchra, the purple needlegrass. The team has worked on this project for about 1 year. People that volunteer at least 2 hours of their time will receive 2 free plants to take home and plant themselves. This is Camille Acevedo in Thousand Oaks for Valley View News.
Eligibility for Covered California has changed so that more people can join. The program gave discounted health insurance to people who had employer insurance. Employer plans increased the cost of covering a family. That created the so-called family glitch and forced many families to go without health insurance. Next year, if a family premium costs more than 9.12% of their household income, they're eligible for federal subsidies or discounts with the program.
Required face masks may make a return to LA County since the RSV illness and 2 new COVID variants are prevalent. Director of LA County Department of Public Health, Barbara Ferrer, says hospitalization and COVID cases are rising. She strongly recommends wearing masks indoors. The RSV respiratory illness has spiked among children. LA County reported a high number of RSV cases than previous years. County officials want parents and guardians to watch out for the children experiencing any difficulties breathing. Health officials are still encouraging booster shots and flu vaccines.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said California's flu activity is high. Recent data shows flu cases spiked the last week of October. The highest flu activity is in Orange, San Bernardino, San Diego, Riverside, and Imperial counties. The CDC said Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, North and South Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia are also categorized as very high in flu cases. All cases were reported in the past month. The CDC said flu hospitalizations haven't been this high since the 2009 swine flu pandemic.
Some Southern California hospitals are using overflow tents to cope with the rising number of patients. The tents are built outside emergency rooms to help cope with increased flu and respiratory illnesses. Hospitals in San Diego reported a jump in flu cases. It's higher than 471 reported last year at the same time in San Diego. The rest of the state have more flu cases this year than compared to last year. Cases are 12 times higher than what was reported in 2019 nationwide.
LA County issued a cold weather alert. It affected the Antelope Valley and the Santa Clarita Valley. People were reminded to not to use stoves, grills, or ovens to heat their homes. A healthcare official says children, the elderly, and people with disabilities are most vulnerable to the cold. Families should always check on loved ones with disabilities during cold weather. Finally, the LA Homeless Service Authority's winter shelter program is open to those in need.
Rental assistance is being offered to residents in Echo Park area. Our reporter Zena Taher was in Echo Park to investigate.
LA City Councilman Mitch O'Farrell has put aside $3 million in rental assistance funds for his constituents to ease the housing crisis. He represents the area by Echo Park Lake, which became filled with homeless encampments during the pandemic. One visitor who declined to provide her name has lived in LA for 80 years.
I don't think it's enough. And another thing, I think we need to get, I think a lot of those people are sick. We need to get them some help, some mental help.
Some Echo Park residents pointed out that rental assistance is only available to people making very little income. Leanne Mitchell waits tables, but they make too much money to qualify for assistance.
I think it is pretty low, but only because rents are so exorbitantly high. I think anywhere else it would be perfect, and I just think every little bit helps.
Sydney, an Echo Park resident who declined to provide her last name, agrees.
There's no limit to how many programs can be put in place to help people.
Deborah Tracy has lived in Echo Park since the 80s.
The $3 million I think will help the people that are already in housing. I really don't know how much it will prevent more homeless from going on the street.
Councilman Mitch O'Farrell's office did not respond to a request for comment. Applications for the rental program will be open through November 4th. Reporting from Echo Park, I'm Zena Taher.
The IRS still needs to give 9 million people their stimulus payments, the Earned Income Tax Credit, or the Child Tax Credit. Many of the people didn't get their payments because the IRS didn't have their information. The free filing tool is open for an extra month. The deadline is November 17th. The people who are owed benefits should file electronically to get their money faster.
An estimated 95% of prisoners serving time in California will eventually be released. Statistics show that 2/3 of them will reoffend and return to prisons within 3 years. But the state hopes to change that by treating prisoners more civilly. For one thing, they would be addressed by their names and not by the numbers. The idea is that punishment should be a loss of freedom and not a loss of dignity. Also, guards can interact with prisoners by playing board games and taking long walks with them. This isn't like the Norwegian model where inmates live in dorm-like cells that sometimes include recording studios. The California plan is still in its infancy. Officials say that the goal is to add more changes to the prison system.
Since there's a huge demand for flights during the holidays, experts say the best travel deals are already gone. On social media, some travelers complain about being hit with higher prices. October travel rates were up 43% from last year. Meanwhile, U.S. airlines reported combined profits for more than $2.4 billion in the third quarter. Airlines say part of the reason for higher costs is that airlines are still operating fewer flights than in 2019, while passenger numbers are back to pre-pandemic levels.
Gas prices are slowly going down as Thanksgiving approaches. For 5 straight weeks, the prices dropped to almost $1 below record levels. The average price for self-served regular gas in California is $5.46. In Los Angeles, the average price of self-serve regular is $5.53, 87 cents less than last month. AAA mobile app allows people to check the nearest and cheapest gas prices in their area. Thanksgiving is when more people travel with their vehicles.
Thanksgiving is nearly here, and there's a nationwide turkey shortage. Avian influenza, inflation, and cutbacks from turkey farmers 3 years ago hurt turkey production this year. The bird flu killed 7.3 million turkeys. Outbreaks happened in 42 states after migrating birds dropped contaminated feces. The decline in turkey production started before the COVID pandemic. The average price of an 8 to 16 pound turkey is about $1.99 per pound, a 73% increase from last year.
The Simi Valley police arrested the ex-husband in the death of Rachel Castillo. She was reported missing last week. Castillo's remains were discovered Sunday in a remote Antelope Valley location. Her ex-husband Zarbab Ali was arrested Sunday afternoon at his parents' home in Victorville. The couple has a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. Castillo's sister called 911 after seeing a significant amount of blood at their apartment. Castillo was 25.
Former Tonight Show host Jay Leno was treated at a Los Angeles burn center after being seriously burned and injured in a car fire. TMZ reported that Leno was in his Los Angeles garage when one of his cars burst into flames. Sources told them the left side of Leno's face was burned. The flames didn't hurt his eyes or his ears. Leno was scheduled to appear in Las Vegas Sunday. It was canceled after the accident. The comedian says he needs a week or two to get back on his feet.
The U.S. Attorney Office announced that former Los Angeles Dodger outfielder Yasiel Puig pleaded guilty to a charge of lying to authorities. He allegedly bet on sporting events. This was part of an illegal gambling operation. This crime could carry up to a maximum sentence of 5 years in federal prison. Puig agreed to pay a fine of at least $55,000. The outfielder is currently playing in South Korea.
More to come on Valley View News. Mexico has unrest, and Black Friday may bring relief for the economy.
Hello, and welcome to On Point. I'm David Reyes. This October, during the Major League Baseball playoffs, Los Angeles Dodger fans have listened to some of the final games that legendary broadcaster Jaime Jarrín will ever call. Jarrín has handled play-by-play duties in Spanish for the Dodgers since 1959, the team's second year here in LA. Since then, he's been inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame, the Dodgers Ring of Honor, and witnessed many of the greatest moments in the team's history. Jarrín is retiring at the end of the season, marking an end to a 64-year career. Today on Point, Jaime Jarrín is our guest, along with his son Jorge, who himself was a Dodger broadcaster. Here's our conversation recorded last April. Now joining me today is the Hall of Famer, the man himself, Mr. Jaime Jarrín, and our second guest is his son, his former colleague too, Mr. Jorge Jarrín.
How are you? Nice to see you.
I'm good. How are you, sir?
Fine, thank you. Fine, thank you. Taking advantage of this day when the Dodgers are not playing.
What was it like growing up? I mean, listening to your dad call Dodger games when you were younger.
Wow. There was never a time in my life when I did not understand or know that my father and my family were connected to the Dodgers.
Okay, I think this is a perfect time to play the second clip from A. Martinez, or Jorge Luis Martinez, as you know him.
I listened to him before I listened to Vin Scully. Before I even knew who Vin Scully was, I listened to Jaime Ring because he's doing games in Spanish on the radio. My grandpa and my uncles would always say that's an Ecuadorian. Es un paisano haciendo los juegos. So it was neat to know that he was from the same country that my grandparents and my aunts and uncles and my mom was from, and he's doing baseball games.
To conclude the show, can you give us your signature call? Let's just pretend it's Game 7 of the World Series, tie game, bottom of the ninth. Dodgers are batting.
Okay, the ninth. Hay una hora, amigos. Ya estoy viendo las casitas en mi pueblo. Se acerca a su fin esta jornada. Listo el pitcher, tiene las señas, viene el lanzamiento, batazo profundo al jardín central. La pelota se va y despídala con un beso. Se fue de cuadrangular.
Wow,
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's the famous call.
And you know, that famous call has now been enshrined in places like the Smithsonian Institute. There is currently an exhibit that has been extended called Play Ball in Washington, D.C. And my father and some of his memorabilia are a big part of that exhibit. And so it's something that has been recognized on a national basis. And of course, in 1998, my father was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. Mm-hmm. So it's been an impressive career, to say the least.
Mm-hmm. That was Jaime Harin, the Hall of Famer. This is his last and final season after 64 years. I would also like to thank his son Jorge for joining us. It's been an honor and pleasure talking to you guys. Thank you so much.
David, thank you.
Thank you.
You're watching On Point. We'll be right back with more.